make sure to give my dad a 5-star review.
Make sure to like and subscribe to his YouTube. Thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
In the bustling streets of ancient Jerusalem, during the time of Jesus, the atmosphere is electric. The city is in the throes of Passover, a sacred Jewish festival, and its inhabitants are about to witness an event that will be etched into the annals of history. Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor, steps onto his platform, ready to uphold a long-standing tradition, the release of a prisoner chosen by popular demand as a gesture of goodwill for the holy occasion.
Which of the two shall be released to you? Jesus of Nazareth?
We cannot let this happen. We must do
Guilty of proclaiming himself
King of the Jews?
No, he ran the crowd.
or Barabbas?
Two men find themselves at the center of this public spectacle. The first is Jesus of Nazareth, a charismatic figure who has captivated the masses with his teachings of love, compassion, and a revolutionary concept of a kingdom beyond this world. The second is Barabbas, a notorious criminal with a rap sheet that includes insurrection and murder. This moment, a juxtaposition of two radically different paths, has been immortalized in religious texts and human consciousness. Fast forward to the present day, and this historical episode serves as a modern-day commentary about American Christians. Just as the crowd in Jerusalem chose Barabbas over Jesus, there are instances today when contemporary believers, swayed by worldly temptations, be it power, wealth, or social approval, make choices that diverge from the red-letter teachings of Jesus we see in the Gospels. Barabbas represents the kind of hero that people often seek, immediate, tangible, and worldly. His release satisfies the crowd's immediate sense of justice and freedom, but offers no lasting spiritual value. Rather, Barabbas can symbolize the darker aspects of human nature, violence, rebellion, and lawlessness, that some Christians choose to embrace or even overlook. In the context of Roman-occupied Jerusalem, Barabbas embodies the zeal for political revolution. He's the insurrectionist, the fighter, the one who they think will make Jerusalem great again. And well, if as Christians we're supposed to take the stories of the Bible and learn from them, did we really learn the lesson about choosing Barabbas over Jesus? I'm not convinced we did. Welcome to Heavenly Homeland, a 5-part audio documentary from the Faithful Politics podcast that looks at the impact of Christian nationalism in America. I'm your host, Will Wright.
Most importantly, I brought my Bible.
Messiah will arrive. Now, they're looking at Donald Trump. One of the rabbis illustrated how his name in the gematria, the numerology of his name, actually means Messiah.
If Jesus Christ gets down off the cross and told me Trump is with Russia, I would tell him, hold on a second, I need to check with the president if it's true.
You will see that Trump is the Christ, that he is the son of David, King David, and that he is the Son of Man.
Trump is elected by God to be the President of the United States.
Make America great again. I need a prophet that'll say what I say about America. God found a man. He sought for a man.
As 21st century readers of the Bible, it's easy to lose sight of the context in which the crowds choosing Barabbas took place. But that context is a critical component to understanding one of the key takeaways of the story. A story that all 4 gospel writers found important enough to include in their writings. You see, in the context of Jesus' time, many Jews were eagerly expecting a Messiah who would favor Israel and lead them to victory over the Romans, restoring Israel as an independent, God-governed nation. However, Jesus consistently steered clear of these politically charged expectations. He didn't align himself with the pro-Israel, anti-Roman sentiment or any other nationalistic agendas, even though it was expected from the Messiah of God's chosen people. Fast forward to the present, where some segments of Christianity, particularly in certain evangelical circles, can sometimes emphasize the pursuit of political power and align with nationalistic figures. This alignment can be seen as a reflection of the choice of Barabbas, a preference for earthly power and political solutions to societal problems, rather than a focus on the spiritual and moral teachings of Christianity. The link, therefore, lies in the choice between two paths, one that seeks change through spiritual and moral transformation, represented by Jesus, and another that seeks change through political and militant power, represented by Barabbas. This dichotomy can serve as a lens to examine how religious faith is expressed in the political arena and the choices made by religious communities in aligning with certain political figures or movements. So when we think about the modern-day evangelical church, are we surprised that so many Christians choose power over passion, nationalism over universalism, and earthly authority over spiritual humility, mirroring the choice of Barabbas over Jesus, as reflected in all four Gospels? I certainly am not surprised, especially when it comes to Donald Trump.
I think God calls all of us to fill different roles at different times, and I think that he wanted Donald Trump to become president, and that's why he's there. And I think he has done a tremendous job in supporting a lot of the things that people of faith really care about.
Comes to this idea of using force to topple evil. And I wanted to clarify that I believe the Bible, especially Romans 13, does give President Trump moral authority to use whatever force necessary, including assassination or even war, to topple an evil dictator like...
Could it be that President Trump right now has been sort of raised for such a time as this, just like Queen Esther, to help save the Jewish people from an Iranian menace?
As a Christian, I certainly believe that's possible.
How I even got involved, because one thing I said, I'll never do politics. But when it came down to it wasn't about doing politics. It was about an assignment to say no to President Trump would be saying no to God.
God's used imperfect people all through history. King David wasn't perfect. Saul wasn't perfect. And I said, Mr. President, I know there are people that say, you said you were the chosen one. And I said, you were.
In a 2020 Edison Research exit poll, Trump won 76% of the white evangelical vote, and in 2016, he won 80%. In 2023, the firm Harris X and the Salt Lake City-based Deseret News found 53% of Republican voters said Trump was a person of faith, which was higher than Mike Pence's rating, Mitt Romney's, and even Joe Biden, who are arguably more vocal and representative of the faiths they each belong to.
I am the chosen one.
In a CBS YouGov poll, 71% of respondents believe the things Trump says are true, which was the highest percentage over the truthiness of other groups like Friends and Family and even religious leaders.
When you think about it, I've got to be the cleanest sheriff. I think I'm the most honest human being, perhaps, that God ever created, perhaps.
This finding is wildly inconsistent with what the data actually bears out, though, as the Washington Post fact-checking team has cataloged more than 30,000 false or misleading claims while Donald Trump was president.
Please.
Mr. President, after 3.5 years, you regretted all the lying you've done to the American people.
All the what?
All the lying, all the dishonesties.
That who has done?
You have done. Tens of thousands.
Go ahead, please. Please. Go ahead.
I wanted to ask about the payroll tax.
I don't think there's much dispute about the perceived idolatry many people in the religious community have of the 45th president. To help us better understand how idolatry works in the Christian context, especially as it pertains to the former president, we spoke with Andrew Whitehead, Associate Professor of Sociology at Indiana University, Purdue, and one of the foremost experts about Christian nationalism. He recently came out with a book called American Idolatry: How Christian Nationalism Betrays the Gospel and Threatens the Church.
The title, I came up with it. If you don't like it that much, it was imposed upon me. But, I think really what I tried to point out, and what I hope with this title brings to mind, is really does intertwine how closely connected the Christian faith and symbols of the Christian faith and these different beliefs are and have been to these different aspects of being an American citizen. And when we start to see, how closely those have been intertwined, then we start to hopefully look into the history behind it. Why has it been like that? Or perhaps why shouldn't it be? Or what were detrimental aspects of that closely intertwining those two? And so then I think hopefully that lays the groundwork to start this journey and start asking these questions. So, as we think of idolatry, in the Christian tradition, this idea that, idols tempt us to put our faith in them because they may offer us protection or provision, right? But then they require allegiance. We have to, as we look at the story of God's people, or really in any religion, if we're talking about idolatry or idol worship, we have to swear allegiance to them. And then that's going to cost us something. And so thinking deeply about what we're swearing allegiance to and what it's asking from us and what is it going to cost us. Because then throughout the book, I, try to highlight that when Christians, buy into and swear allegiance to this, this marrying of the faith with power, a certain type of political power, through, because they're scared of losing something through fear and threat. And then basically saying, we will, give our allegiance to this if it provides us protection. What does that do to us? Right. And so in the Christian tradition, this idea of idol worship, that it distorts our theological imaginations. It distorts our knowledge of God, and it distorts how we view our neighbors. And I think, and I try to make this point then, that leads us to betray the gospel, and betray our loyalty, ultimate loyalty to Jesus. And so that's where I think these two words, play a central role in trying to lay out this foundation of where we're going and how we got here.
Now I should make something abundantly clear here. I recognize not everyone who voted for or supports Trump idolizes him in a way that is consistent with what Professor Whitehead just explained. People support politicians for a variety of different reasons, like political parties, promises they've made, or what they stand for. I mean, heck, my co-host, Pastor Josh Burcham, he's the faithful host. He's a Republican, and in 2016, he voted for Trump. And I guess one can say he's a pretty okay guy.
Most Republicans voted Republican. They weren't voting because they loved Trump or thought he was God's choice. They did as they have always done, and they were following their peers.
This is Dr. Stephen Hassan. He's a licensed mental health professional, a cult expert, and he also specializes in undue influence. He wrote a book in 2019 called The Cult of Trump, and in it he makes the case that the Trump movement checks all the boxes of the BITE model of cult mind control. BITE, B-I-T-E, is an acronym for Behavior, Information, Thought, and Emotional Control. And like all cult leaders, Hassan argues Trump restricts the information his followers are allowed to accept, demands purity of beliefs that can ostensibly change from moment to moment, and appeals to his followers through the conjuring of primal emotions. Here, Dr. Hassan is speaking about the specific groups of people within the religious community who, well, believe in some pretty wild stuff.
It's the people who think God is using Trump. And as it turns out, these are the authoritarian cults where the leaders say they can talk to God. God told them Trump won in 2020, and that people have to be covered by their spiritual power and grace. Otherwise, Satan will invade them and they'll be possessed by demons. And don't believe the media, because that's all fake news. That's satanic. So people are following a prophet in air quotes, or an apostle, not following Trump. They're told, well, God is using Trump like King Cyrus. You know, he was a sinner, but he was a bully for God, so he's more like that. I heard even Netanyahu say those words, which I put in my book, that Trump was like a King Cyrus. Super weird. But in any case, if you can't think negative thoughts, if you can't feel free to criticize the leader, the doctrine, or the group, these are warning flags. You're not in a healthy religious group.
There's something unique about Trumpism, especially as it applies to people of faith. There's this almost holier-than-thou aspect that's applied to them. And I haven't really seen this be applied to any other person within the political landscape. To help explain this relationship between charismatic figures like Trump and the religious right is Dr. Renee Carr. She's a clinical psychologist who consults with influential figures in politics and business and unpacks the psychology of Trump and religiosity.
So when it comes to religion or religiosity, people already have one mindset that is based off religious practices and glorifying or putting on a pedestal a particular religious leader. So that's the religiosity is one thing. When you combine that with groupthink, meaning that we all think he is the second coming of Christ, and when we attach that to our beliefs in Christ, a higher power, and that if you attack our religious beliefs, we are then going to have to defend that, because that gets into our deeper moral beliefs and values, then you are manipulating, or what you're seeing is the manifestation of the belief system of highly religious people or religiosity, which is they focus on behaviors and people rather than true doctrine and understanding what the religion may mean. In addition to, we have groupthink, which means that as the group, we are going to intensify the beliefs of everyone else in the group, intensify our cohesion and power as a collective, because together we can't be separated. And together we also have individual anonymity, meaning that I can be more loud and more vocal because my peers are supporting what I think and believe in. And if we're edging each other on or pumping each other up, then we're going to be more and more stronger in our beliefs than if we were just individuals. So when you combine that with religiosity, meaning not necessarily a spiritual belief, but the act of being religious, then they are focusing more on, well, this is just what we are meant to do. This is our belief power. And wherever two or more are gathered, then we're going to be even more powerful. So then they're using religious doctrine to reinforce the group thing. So you have like a double whammy. So if they had just been religious on their own, it would not be as intense or cult-like as if it were in a group of people.
In the run-up to the 2016 presidential election, there is a lot of nose-holding being done by many in the evangelical Christian community in order to justify voting for Donald Trump. None was as obvious as what Jerry Falwell Jr. said on the Anderson Cooper show on CNN.
Chief. We're electing a commander-in-chief, and we can't expect our commander-in-chief to have the same qualities as our pastors. And I think most of the rank-and-file evangelicals have figured that out on their own.
Falwell's statement here opens up a Pandora's box of moral and ethical considerations, particularly for the Christian community. On the surface, his words might seem harmless, but they resonate with a lot of the justifications evangelicals have made for supporting Trump. It feels like he's laying down a sort of framework that makes it okay for Christians to put political success over the personal integrity of their leaders. And sure, no one's without their flaws, but when Christians rally behind someone like Trump, and champion a so-called faith, it shouldn't come as a shock when this leads to some side eyes toward Christianity itself.
And on June 14th, 1946, God looked down on his planned paradise and said, I need a caretaker. So God gave us Trump.
Under no circumstances, you are promising America tonight, you would never abuse power as retribution against anybody.
Except for day one.
I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet, just kiss. I don't even wait.
So God made Trump.
And when you're a star, they let you do it.
Strong enough to rustle the deep state.
You can do anything. Grab them by the... You can do anything. That's what you said, correct?
Well, historically, that's true with stars.
It's true with stars that they can grab women by the...
Well, that's what it's... If you look over the last million years, I guess that's been largely true. Not always, but unfortunately or fortunately.
So God gave us Trump.
I certainly don't incite violence.
Knock the crap out of him. I'd like to punch him in the face. I don't know if I'll do the fighting myself or if other people will.
Maybe he should have been roughed up, because it was absolutely disgusting what he was doing.
Understands the difference between
Proverbs, the chapter, never bend to envy. I've had that thing all of my life where people are bending to envy.
So God made Trump. God had to have somebody willing.
When we go in church and when I drink my little wine, which is about the only wine I drink, and have my little cracker, I guess that's a form of asking for forgiveness.
So God made Trump.
Is there a favorite Bible verse or Bible story that has informed your thinking or your character through life, sir?
Tell people about an eye for an eye. You can almost say that.
When you said that you've never asked God for forgiveness, do you regret making that remark?
No, I have great relationship with God, but I like to be good. I don't like to have to ask for forgiveness, and I am good. I don't do a lot of things that are bad. I try and do nothing that's bad. I live a very different life than probably a lot of people would think.
2 Corinthians, right? 2 Corinthians 3:17. That's the whole ball game.
Our military fight the system all day.
Now, if I don't get elected, it's going to be a bloodbath.
By attending church on Sunday, and then his oldest son turns and says,
I'm being indicted for you, the black population. I am being indicted for a lot of different groups.
So God made Trump.
To help us understand how the tendency for one particular religious group to be consumed with a figure like Trump, we turn to Dr. David Gushee, Distinguished University Professor of Christian Ethics at Mercer University, who is an author of many books to include Defending Democracy from Its Christian Enemies.
Is a deep dissatisfaction with contemporary pluralism, liberalism, religious diversity. Sometimes it's about race, too, like immigration. And a deep nostalgia for a Christian-dominated politics and culture. So, Make America Great Again partly meant it make it Christian again. And here's where I think Christian nationalists, like that diagnostic category, is helpful. When I read Whitehead and Perry's Taking America Back for God, what they're talking about is the idea that a lot of people hold that this is, or at least should be, a Christian nation, which means led by white, conservative Christian men, especially, right? With a rolling back of the gains of power for women, for people of color, and a rolling back of immigration, and even a rolling back of the separation of church and state and religious liberty the way that we have it. So some of the Christian nationalists are really pushing for an explicitly Christian nation in which it's understood that Christianity is the official religion of the United States, and like that this is a country that belongs to, by right, white Christians. Used to be white Christian Protestants, but white Christians, and that everybody else should be rolled back and put back in their place. It would also involve all kinds of policy changes to roll back cultural liberalization, including rolling back abortion, rolling back gay rights, trans advances, all of that stuff. Even rolling back, some are arguing for rolling back the equality for women in society, right? I think the unique thing that Pentecostals kind of brought was the susceptibility to a charismatic leader who reminded them of the charismatic leaders who often lead charismatic and Pentecostal churches. Authoritarian, bombastic, strong, decisive, masculine. So Trump represented that, but Trump also knew how to say to conservative Christians of all types, this country belongs to you and I will take it back for you.
We started this episode comparing Trump to the biblical character of Barabbas. This was more of a metaphor used to set the context of this conversation. But did you know that some evangelical Christians have their own biblical explanation for Trump's rise in the Christian community? It's true. And it's one that starts in the book of Isaiah with King Cyrus.
We're living in a time when Jesus is saying, look up, for redemption draws nigh, redemption is drawing nigh, and God is putting pressure on satanic heavenly places. And I'm saying this was prophesied all the way back during a parallel time, just like America's time, when Cyrus, who I said in 2016, I said, Donald Trump is the modern-day Cyrus. The Lord told me Isaiah 45, the next president of the United States would be an Isaiah 45 president. The only person that matches the description of Isaiah 45 as a 45th president is somebody that doesn't know him. Everyone running is saying they're an evangelical except for one heathen from New York. That's Donald Trump. He thinks he's a Christian and he doesn't know he's not. That was the one. There's the Cyrus.
To help explain the Trump connection to King Cyrus, here's André Gagné, professor and chair, Theological Studies at Concordia University in Montreal.
How do you come up with Trump as being the new Cyrus? Like Lance Wallnau, his entire theory that Trump is this new Cyrus figure is that one day he felt the Holy Spirit telling him, go to Isaiah 45. Go to the book of Isaiah 45. Then he goes to the book of Isaiah 45, and you can read it in his book. He tells you. And then he starts reading, and Cyrus, my chosen one, he will break the doors and free the captives and all of that. And then he had a revelation. Isaiah 45, the 45th president of the United States. Trump Cyrus. You see, so, come on. Nobody is going to read Isaiah 45 is going to see Trump there. You see, so it's really kind of this fanciful exegesis that is not controlled by any kind of mechanisms that we use when we read the Bible. We use historical grammatical tools that help us understand the context in which a text was written. And it doesn't always apply directly to us. We can gain ideas or insights from biblical texts. Yes. You need to understand the context of a text. You can't just jump directly without understanding what this context is about. So it's that kind of fanciful, uncontrolled hermeneutic that kind of goes all over the place, and it's really based on impressions of what they deem to be impressions of the Spirit.
What makes this Trump comparison to Cyrus so powerful is the level of credence that it lends to all of Trump's actions. For a time in 2017, televangelist Jim Baker was actually selling a Cyrus Trump coin for, you guessed it, $45. And if you wanted to drop $450, well, you can get the whole Cyrus Trump bundle, which includes a booklet.
This coin
and
is
DVD.
our point of contact. When I asked the Lord why the coin, the Lord said, because when you take the coin, it's a point of contact. So your faith is being released with 1 million other believers to pray protection and peace and wisdom and counsel over the President of the United States and over his family. Mm-hmm. That's our point of contact every day. When you see it, remember, that's why we've got to pray, because they think we're crazy, but we're actually the sane ones.
Right.
But to say this was just a one-off prophecy created by folks in the religious right and from figures like Lance Wallnau, it's actually something even the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu suggested when he visited the White House during Trump's presidency.
So we remember the proclamation of the great king, Cyrus the Great, Persian king, 2,500 years ago. He proclaimed that the Jewish exiles in Babylon can come back and rebuild our temple in Jerusalem. We remember 100 years ago, Lord Balfour, who issued the Balfour Proclamation that recognized the rights of the Jewish people in our ancestral homeland. We remember 70 years ago, President Harry S. Truman was the first leader to recognize the Jewish state. And we remember how a few weeks ago, President Donald J. Trump recognized Jerusalem as Israel's capital. Mr. President, this will be remembered by our people throughout the ages. And as you just said, others talked about it. You did it.
Out in the square. Has he been here?
Yes, he's been here.
Let him go without seeing me. Paul, why didn't you tell me?
So you did write to him?
Right.
Against my express orders, you went behind my back and complained to your cousins.
But I didn't. I've never written to them.
How did he know this address?
I don't know.
Or that you'd been ill?
I don't know.
What else did you tell him?
Nothing. I never wrote.
What lies about me have you told him?
Paul, if I had written, which I didn't, do you suppose I'd have said a word to my cousins against my husband?
You think I can trust the insane ravings of a mad woman?
That clip you just heard was from a 1940s British film called Gaslight that was based on a 1938 play by the same name. It's a movie about a husband who manipulates his wife to make her think she's actually losing her sense of reality so he can commit her to a mental institution and steal her inheritance. This is actually where we get the term gaslighting. Now, gaslighting is defined as an elaborate and insidious technique of deception and psychological manipulation used to undermine the victim's confidence and their own ability to distinguish truth from falsehood, right from wrong, or reality from appearance, thereby rendering them psychologically dependent on the gaslighter. Trump uses gaslighting to make American voters doubt their memory of his past actions and positions, refute basic facts, and distrust reliable sources of information. The ultimate aim is to give himself a monopoly on truth. And sadly, he's found the perfect audience with evangelical Christians.
Just stick with us. Don't believe the crap you see from these people, the fake news. Just remember, what you're seeing and what you're reading is not what's happening.
Let's take one small example to illustrate this gaslighting. Remember birtherism? If not, it was this racist trope that Trump has been peddling about former President Barack Obama since 2011 when he was considering a 2012 presidential run. There's debate about the origins of this conspiracy, but there's no argument who's been pushing the conspiracy the longest.
The reason I have a little doubt, just a little, it's because he grew up and nobody knew him. I want him to show his birth certificate. I'm saying it's a real possibility, much greater than I thought 2 or 3 weeks ago. Then he has pulled one of the great cons in the history of politics and beyond politics.
To better understand how Trump intentionally uses gaslighting to push a narrative, here's Amanda Carpenter, writer and editor at Protect Democracy. And before that, she worked for The Bulwark and CNN as a contributor. She's also the author of the book, Gaslighting America, Why We Love It When Trump Lies to Us.
And so that just seemed to keep happening, especially with how Trump would play the media. And then there was this whole idea like, oh, well, Trump doesn't really know what he's doing. I'm like, he knows exactly what he's doing. This guy grew up manipulating the New York tabloids and media. He knows how to do this. And so I started watching him kind of because it's not just a lie, it's a whole narrative that sucks people in. And he has these little tricks and he does it every time. And once you see how his tricks work, you can't unsee it. It's like the first thing to know is that when he comes up with something like, the big election lie, the election was rigged, he never comes up with that on his own. He kind of picks up something that's in the internet or the tabloids or people are talking about, and he just puts it out there. Oh, people are saying, stakes the claim. And then so he gets that going. And then soon enough, he just does this thing like, I'm just asking questions. Like, I'm just asking questions. I call this advance and deny. Like another step they use is where he'll call into Fox and Friends and just like, I don't know if Barack Obama was born in Kenya, but don't you think people should look into it? And then that gets people looking into it. And so he does these little tricks. And then once the media starts to lose interest in the story, he'll promise more information is coming. He builds suspense like, I have a team. I'm sending a team of investigators to Hawaii to dig up his birth certificate.
Today, I'm very proud of myself because I've accomplished something that nobody else has been able to accomplish. I was just informed while on the helicopter that our president has finally released a birth certificate. I'd want to look at it, but I hope it's true so that we can get on to much more important matters so the press can stop asking me questions. He should have done it a long time ago.
And so he does these things that just suck people in, and it's so predictable. But the media loves it. Like, he is a media creation. He knows exactly how to give them enough to keep the story going, to tantalize people, to say outrageous things that nobody else is saying. And as I lay out the book, I really think his birtherism gambit is the key to understanding to how this works. Because everyone knew it was wrong. Everybody knew it was outrageous. But he was willing to just kind of dangle a little bit of racism out there to control the narrative. And in the end, he admitted he was wrong. Like, people are like, he never admits he was wrong. He held a press conference, said, I solved it. I made Barack Obama produce the birth certificate, but he declared victory at the end by saying, I solved this problem.
Now, not to mention her in the same breath, but Hillary Clinton and her campaign of 2008 started the birther controversy. I finished it. You know what I mean. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. Now we all want to get back to making America strong and great again.
Like, he always squeezes out a way to claim victory, and everyone else is just left sputtering. Like, how can he do that? It's like he does this with everything every time. It's not surprising.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy.
The deepening ties between many Christians and Donald Trump, along with the emergence of Christian nationalism, have ushered in a range of complexities and perils, impacting both the Christian community and society at large. The decision of many Christians to align with a figure like Trump, known for his divisive rhetoric and actions, have raised serious questions about the integrity and moral direction of the Christian faith. This alignment, often perceived as an overlooking of moral flaws for political advantage, or an underestimation of the violence associated with Christian nationalism, starkly contrasts with fundamental Christian values of compassion, humility, and love for one's neighbors. Consequently, there's a looming threat of diminished religious credibility, where Christianity risks being viewed more as a quest for political power than a spiritual or ethical endeavor. In our upcoming and final episode, we'll pivot to explore another facet of the Christian faith, one that delves into how faith, when not intertwined with the pursuit of power, could more accurately reflect the ministry Jesus advocated. We'll examine a vision of kingdom power that aligns more with forgiveness than retribution, more hope than conspiracy, and love over our enemies, which offers a perspective that perhaps more closely mirrors the true essence of Jesus' teachings. See you next time. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing to our regular podcast, Faithful Politics, where a Democrat and a conservative pastor talk with authors, scholars, politicians, and journalists about topics related to faith, politics, and the intersection of the two. To learn more, please visit www.faithfulpolitics.us.